In this stream, I'm going to be first of all going to be continuing the discussion I had in the stream yesterday about Sony's Spider-Man universe without Spider-Man, why it's such an incredibly cynical universe. In yesterday's stream, I talked about the fact that Sony, for some reason, chose to call their universe Sony's Spider-Man universe, even though it doesn't have Spider-Man in it. They made it so clear that they thought we were morons that would buy a ticket for anything. We made it clear, no, we're not stupid, Sony. You are, and thus you only played yourselves. Congrats, guys, on embarrassing yourself in front of the whole world. And I did not mention yesterday is that the basic idea of doing these movies where the main character is a Spider-Man villain, the movie doesn't have Spider-Man in it, that's just a really bad idea because these characters were not intended to be the lead of a film. No one wants to see characters like Morbius or Craven not only be the main characters of a movie, but also become anti heroes. We want these characters to be villains. Honestly, one of the things that I found super refreshing about the Penguin TV show on HBO Max, which is connected to the movie The Batman from Matt Reeves, is that you had the Penguin in that show, Oswald Cobblepot, and he actually is a villain in that show. The filmmakers, the showrunners actually, are not trying to make Cobblepot sympathetic. They're not trying to make him an anti-hero or anything like that. They give you a little bit of what caused him to become the way that he is, what were the events that shaped him, but at the same time, the show makes it very clear. No, Cobblepot is a villain, pure and simple. By the end, you're like, there is nothing redeeming about this guy. We feel no sympathy for him. Instead, we see Cobblepot is just an absolutely despicable person, primarily because he literally is not loyal to anyone. He was only ever loyal to his mother, even though, as we learned by the end, she actually hated him. Cobblepot still remain loyal to her. It's fascinating when you realize by the end just how incredibly unhealthy the relationship actually is. And aside from his mother, Cobblepot is so unloyal to everyone else. He just uses people around him to serve his own ends. He's just such a manipulative and duplicitous person who will stab anyone in the back to save his own skin. By the end, you literally see him flat out murder this kid that actually was 100% loyal to Cobblepot, that actually stood by his side the whole time. And then by the end, Cobblepot just chokes him to death because loyalty can be a weakness. That makes you just so disgusted with his character. I think it's super refreshing in this day and age where Disney is, for example, trying to take Cruella or Maleficent and reframe them into anti-heroes, and you have Sony trying to take these villains and turn them into anti-heroes, not allowing their villains to, well, truly be villainous. It's like, guys, Penguin is doing it right. Take notes from this show. So, man, I don't know what Sony was thinking. They did a horrible job with this whole shared universe. As I was saying in a stream yesterday, if your best movies are the Venom movies, then your universe is bad. The Venom movies, quite a good amount of flaws in them. There's entertainment value to them, but they're not very well done movies. They're not very competently made movies. And even in the Venom movies, for example, yeah, you have total jumps in there. I mean, I appreciate that Tom Hardy goes all in when it comes to this over-the-top performance. He commits to that 100%. You go, yeah, I appreciate that. Tom Hardy didn't hold back at all. But, man, Venom movies, it's not all that good. They should have been a lot better than they are, especially by the time you get to Venom: The Last Dance. You just see all the wasted potential here and how these movies could have been a lot more fun and entertaining than they actually were. I mean, it's fun to like see Eddie and the symbiote bounce off each other right from the beginning of Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage. And then you see them go their separate ways for a bit. You see Venom at a party. That's fun. But the movie should have had more entertainment value to them than they actually did. Also, to clarify something, I don't know if Sony has publicly announced we're not doing any more of these villain spin-offs. There's actually a report that said Sony's not doing any more of these films. But even if Sony hasn't publicly announced that they're not doing any more of these villain spin-off films, if they're not doing any more, then they're admitting that this shared universe was a failure. If the shared universe was a success, they would keep it going, but they're not. Just absolute failure all around. And then today I wanted to actually talk a bit about Inside Out 2. I think that's a fantastic movie, one of the best animated films to come out in the last 5 years. I would absolutely say one of the best Pixar films. I think it's clearly better than Moana 2. I think Inside Out is something special because it allows people, especially kids or teenagers, to understand themselves better, understand why are the people around me behaving the way they're behaving. It's kind of like Mean Girls, except you understand why the characters are making the decisions that they're making. So thus, it's much easier to feel sympathy for the characters when you're unpacking why are they doing what they're doing. Whereas in Mean Girls, you have just a character that's a bully, and you're not going into their mind to understand why they're doing what they're doing. Specifically, I want to talk about the way Inside Out 2 handles anxiety. I really appreciated that. First of all, I'm very happy Inside Out 2 is looking at the question, why do we have anxiety? And then it's looking at the question of how can anxiety be good when it's channeled properly, when you know how to handle it well, when you know how to manage it well, but also how can anxiety hurt us when it's out of control? Specifically when it comes to the actual character of anxiety in the film, I really appreciate that we see, okay, anxiety is responsible for a lot of the conflict that occurs throughout the runtime. She ends up making things worse, hurting Riley. She is definitely antagonistic, but at the same time, the movie makes it really clear that anxiety does not have a villainous motivation. She has no nefarious intent. We see that, oh, anxiety actually did want to help. She actually did want to protect Riley. She believed she was doing what was best for Riley, and thus she was oblivious to the negative impact her actions were having on Riley. And then you get to the end of the movie, and you can just tell that for anxiety, that realization has sunk in that I wanted to help. I thought I was doing what was best for Riley, but I took things too far, and thus I hurt her. I really appreciate that moment too, where the new sense of self forms. Anxiety hears for the first time, I'm not good enough. And she goes, what? You can tell that's not what anxiety actually wanted. So she's not feeling very happy about this, but she's thinking, I can fix it, I can fix it. And thus anxiety is frantically trying to fix things, to make things better, but that only ends up making things worse. You actually flat out hear anxiety say, what have I done? And then Joy pulls anxiety away from the console. Actually, specifically, I really appreciate the way this is visualized, where it's like anxiety is phased out. Like she's both there and not there at the same time. Joy comes up to the console while there's this basically tornado around because anxiety is just trying so frantically to make things better that she's basically created a tornado. Joy steps inside and sees that anxiety is like stuck in place, and then Joy pulls anxiety away. You hear anxiety say, Joy, I'm sorry. I wanted to protect her, but you're right. We don't get to choose who Riley is. That hits very hard. And then when you actually see all of Riley's emotions hug Riley's sense of self, basically embracing everything that makes Riley who she is, both the good and the bad. That hits really hard. And also, I think the way Inside Out 2 visually shows that Riley's having this panic attack, this anxiety attack, is really effective. It feels right. Oh, yeah, that is what that is like, where Riley's heart is beating super fast. She's like this, and just breathing hard, sweating. It feels like, yeah, that's what happens when you're going through an anxiety attack. And actually, when Joy's coming up to the console, I like how we see she tries to touch anxiety, and she's not really able to do it at first because anxiety is just stuck in place. I really appreciated that. I also like the design of anxiety. It's very interesting. It's different from the other emotions. Actually, I like the way all the emotions look different from each other. Like the fact that in Inui looks like a typical bored teenager. We see that he's basically playing on his phone. That's what it looks like anyway. He has a console app. He's usually just sitting on the couch. It's like, yeah, that fits. He comes off usually as just utterly apathetic and indifferent, just looking at his console app. It feels like a typical teenager on their phone, not really interested in anything else. And then Envy actually is intentionally designed to be cute. So she's designed to be the adorable emotion. She's smaller than all the other ones, has like sparkling eyes. And embarrassing, this big guy with a hoodie that has sweaty hands. It's like barely says anything. I really liked that. I thought overall, Inside Out 2 is just utterly fantastic. I especially appreciated the way it handles anxiety. And actually, as the TV tropes page puts it, anxiety is the closest thing to a big bad Inside Out 2 truly has. But she's also a well-intentioned extremist that doesn't have any actual nefarious motives, but just does have flaws as a character, where, kind of like Joy in the first movie, anxiety wants to have control over things. It's coming from a good place, wanting to protect Riley, but because anxiety more and more pushes for control until she realizes by the end, oh no, I took things too far and thus I hurt Riley. Anxiety wants to be in charge until things get worse, until all the emotions actually set things right the way they're supposed to be. That'll wrap things up for this stream here. That's all the stuff I wanted to talk about today. Have a good one, everybody.